So we're going to start today towards the middle of Daf Kuf Chav Daled, Amid Beis, the last two words on the line where it says Tani Chada. Tani Chada. Yeah. Maybe a page before? Yeah. It should be over there. Tani Chada. So what we learned yesterday was about the Braise that spoke about what kind of firewood could you use on Yom Tov. And that's if a person does not have the regular firewood that he would use. So we were speaking about whether a person can take a keli and throw it into a fire, for example, a wooden chair. Or how about if that wooden chair broke? Could you use broken pieces of a keli for the firewood on Yom Tov? Of course, this is all in Yom Tov. So the Gemara now will bring back that Braise that we learned about yesterday and explain it. The Gemara is going to bring actually three different Braises that say something different and explain who the opinions of these Braises are. Tani Chada. We learned the one Braise. Masikin bekelim. You can use a keli for firewood. Ve'e masikin b'shivre kelim. But you cannot use a keli that broke as firewood on Yom Tov. V'tanya idoch. In a second Braise we learned. Kishem shemasikim bekelim. Just as you're allowed to use kelim for firewood and Yom Tov, kach masikim b'shivre kelim. You could also use broken wooden kelim as firewood. V'tanya idach, and yet in a third Braise we learned, much more stringent, ein masikim loy b'kelim v'loy b'shivre kelim. You can use plain firewood that was prepared as firewood that you could use, but a keli, that's a wooden keli, you can't use for firewood, and also a broken chair, for example, you can't use either. None of it. So what's going on with these three Braises? So the Gemara explains, Ha Rabbi Yehuda. The first Braise follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara explained that Rabbi Yehuda holds that there's a muktzah that's called noilad. If there's something that is created on Shabbos, or Yom Tov, that's called muktzah, noilad. Okay, so over here, therefore, if you have a wooden chair, so that's something that existed before Yom Tov began, you can use it, it's not muktzah, you could take it and throw it into the fireplace for firewood. But if it's something which is noilad, if it broke and now it has a new purpose, it doesn't have its original use, so it's like a new thing that was created, that's muktzah. That's the first Braise where it says, Masikim bekelim ve'ei masikim b'shivre kelim. Ha Rab Shimon, the second Braise that says that you're allowed to use any keli, a broken keli, it doesn't make any difference. This follows the opinion of Rab Shimon. Rab Shimon is very lenient about muktzah. Rab Shimon says that there's no issue of muktzah if it's a whole keli, there's no issue of muktzah if it's something which is broken, there's no noilad. He doesn't hold of noilad. And Ha Rab Nechemye, the third Braise follows the opinion of Rab Nechemye. As we learned once before, Rab Nechemya holds a much more stringent approach to muktzah, and he says that anything that can't be used for its original intended purpose that it was made for it can't be used on Yom Tov. So even if a keli, a chair for example, a wooden chair, it's intended to sit on it. For that you're allowed to move it. But to move it, to take it, to use for firewood, that you're not allowed. So you're not allowed to use, not a chair, not a broken chair, to be used for firewood on Shabbos. Omer Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, Hani livni de shtayer mibinyana. These bricks that are left over from a building site, and you have leftover bricks, shari l'tiltinu. You're allowed to move them on Yom Tov. Why? Aren't they muktzah? They're not a keli at all. So the answer is no, they could be used. The chazul and mizga alaya. It could be used to sit on it, or to lean on it. We had this before already, brought in the Gemara. Sharginu. So if he set them up stacked them up in a row, so then it's clear that he's setting it aside to be used for building, and then it's going to be muktzah. It's not a keli, he's not going to use it for anything, so then it's muktzah. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Nachman said in the name of Shmuel, Cheres ketana, a small piece of broken earthenware, mutter letaltel b'chotzer. In a chotzer, in a courtyard, it's allowed to be moved. Aval b'karmelis loy, but not in a karmelis. So Rashi explains the reason is, in a chotzer, you have all kinds of utensils there. And this broken earthenware could be used as a cover. So it has a use. But in a karmelis, you don't have utensils there, so it can't be used as a cover. So in a karmelis, it's going to be muktzah. Rav Nachman Didei Omar, Rav Nachman himself said, Afilu b'karmelis, even in a karmelis, a broken earthenware could also be used. For what? So Rashi says, if there's any spittle on the ground that you want to cover, even in a karmelis, which is not a place where a person keeps his dishes or whatever it is, but even there it could be used to cover something. But it's if there's a broken earthenware in the Rishus HaRabim, there has no use, so it's muktzah. Rava Amar, a third opinion. Rava says, even in Rishus Harabim, a broken earthenware has a use. Or actually, again, let me clarify again. Rashi says no, in the Rishus Harabim it has no use. But Rava's opinion is, as the Gemara will soon explain, although it has no use in the Rishus Harabim, but if it's an item that has a use in a karmelis or in a chotzer, so even in a Rishus Harabim where it has no use, we don't consider it to be muktzah. If in one kind of place it has a use, so then I say even in a place where it does not have a use, it's not muktzah either. Now the Gemara shares an incident that happened with Rava himself. Rava follows his opinion. Rava was walking on Shabbos in the marketplace of Mechuzah. Itvasoi misane tina. His shoes became dirty with cement. Asa Shame, his servant came, shakal chaspa, and took a piece of earthenware, and he was wiping off with this earthenware the mud from his shoes. Rama be Rabbanan kala. So one of the Rabbanan began screaming and protesting. Omar, so he began protesting because this Rabbanan said it's muktzah. This piece of earthenware in Rishus Harabim has no regular use. This use that he's using it for, to take off the cement of the shoes, that's not a use that it's usually used for. If it would be in a chotzer, so it could be used as a cover. If it would be in a karmelis, it could be used to cover spittle on the ground. But this kind of use is not what it's usually used for at all. So he was screaming, it's muktzah, why are you using it for this? So Omar, so Rava said, Loi mistaya, the Loi gemiri. Not only that this Rabbana that's protesting here, not only does he not know the halach himself, he didn't learn migmin nami migmiri. He tries to teach others his mistake as well, to say that it's muktzah. It's not muktzah, it's not a problem. If it wasn't the chatzar, would it not be fit for use to cover a utensil with it? If it was in a courtyard, so hachanami over here in the Rishus Harabim as well, for me it has a purpose right now that I can use it to clean off my shoes, even though it's not the regular use of it, and therefore here in the Rishus Harabim, mitzad that itself it would be considered muktzah. But if in another place, in a courtyard, it has a use, it has a regular use that I can designate it for, so it's not muktzah in the Rishus Harabim either. Okay, towards the bottom of Kuf Chav Daled Amud Beis. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Megufas chavis shenichteta. You have a cover, a lid of a barrel that the barrel broke. Mutta letaltel b'Shabbos. You're allowed to use it on Shabbos. Tanya nami hachi. We learned this in the Braisa as well. Megufa shenichteta, a lid of a barrel that broke. He ushvareha, the lid and the broken pieces of this barrel. Mutta letaltel b'Shabbos. It's allowed to be moved on Shabbos because it can be used for something else. It can be used as a cover for something else. But the Gemara clarifies, if you want to use it for something else, you're not allowed to take a broken piece and repair it to use as a cover for another keli. If it's not shaped the exact size that you need it as a cover, and you want to just smooth it out and straighten it out, that it should be a good cover, you're not allowed to do that. As Rashi says, the reason is because that's going to be makeh b'patish. You're taking this broken piece and repairing it, that it should be used as a cover. Or to smooth it out to be the right size to be able to support the leg of a bed. You're not allowed to shape it. It's makeh b'patish. If you have these broken pieces and you went and threw it in the garbage, then osir. Now, once you threw it in the garbage, you make it clear that you're not planning on using it. The very fact that you throw something in the garbage, that makes it osir to be used. It's muktzah. Maskef Rav Papa asks on this last point, Ela meyata. Now, if this is the case, if you tell me once you throw something in the garbage, it's automatically muktzah, is that true about anything else as well? Zorik leglime. If a person takes a good garment, a shirt, whatever, he throws it into the garbage, are you going to say the very fact that you threw it into the garbage makes it muktzah, even if it's fit for use for something else? So Rav Papa says that's not reasonable to say. Hachanami dasa, you're going to say you throw... If what?
Why would he throw it in the garbage then?
A good question, right. I don't know, for some reason he doesn't need it. But Rav Papa is saying, if something has a good use, just the fact that you threw it in the garbage is not enough of a reason, on Shabbos that is, right? The point over here is, in the middle of Shabbos, he threw it into the garbage. In other words, Shabbos entered, it was a good garment, or it was a piece of earthenware that could be used for something. So if in the middle of Shabbos, a person goes and throws it in the garbage, that's enough to change the status of this object, that now it should become muktzah. So Rav Papa disagrees. Elam Rav Papa says no. If a person threw it into the garbage on Friday, so before Shabbos, so then Asura. Then I say from before Shabbos, he already showed and made up his mind that he's not going to use it, then it's going to be Asur. But if when Shabbos entered, it was not in the garbage and it was fit to be used for something, the fact that during Shabbos he threw it into the garbage, that's not enough to change its status on Shabbos itself. Oma Baramduri Oma Shmuel. Baramduri said in the name of Shmuel, Krumis Shal Machzeles. Rods, or reeds, that is. Reeds that are leftovers from a mat. So the question is it this muktzah on Shabbos? Does it have any use? Now, before we were talking about broken pieces of a barrel. Now we're talking about leftovers of a mat. What kind of a purpose could that have? So the Gemara says, yeah, mutter l'taltlam b'Shabbos. You're allowed to move it on Shabbos. It has a purpose. My time, Amar Rava, so Rava says, Bar Hamduri Asbarali, he explained it to me. Machzelas gufa, the mat itself. What is the mat itself fit for? Lamai chazia, what is it fit for? Lachasuya beyafre, to cover earth. So as Rashi says, either it's to cover the earth, so the dust of the earth shouldn't come up, or if you have any schmutz on the ground, so you can use a mat to cover that. That's what the mat itself is good for. So haninami, the reeds that are leftovers from the mat are also, they could be used for the same thing. Chazia and the chasuya betinayfis. It can be used to cover any schmutz, any dirt in the ground. So therefore it's not muktzah. Amar Abzeira Amar Rav Shiyare Pruzmiyais. Leftovers of pruzmiyais. According to Rashi's opinion, this is leftovers of a talis. You have a talis with tzitzis, and it's not that a piece ripped off of it. So is this leftovers of a talis useful for something? So he says, no, it's not. Asr l'taltlam b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to move it. You can't do anything with it on Shabbos. Amar Abaye. So Abaye says, b'matlonis she'ein be'em gimel al gimel. We're talking about a piece of this talis that's less than 3 by 3 tfachim. Dolei chazian, it's not going to be used. Loi la'aniyim, it's not fit for use, not for poor people. V'loi la'ashirim. You once had this before in the Gemara. The minimum size of a garment that could be used is 3 by 3 tfachim. Less than that, it's not going to be used even as a patch to cover something. Therefore, it's not fit to be used for Shabbos. So Rashi here specifically says we're talking about the leftover of a piece of a talis. Because if it was stam, a leftover piece of a garment, according to Rashi, then that could still be, even if it's a tiny piece, even if it's smaller than 3 by 3 tfachim, it may still have a use. You can use it to cover something, you can use it to cover schmutz, as we said before, but here we're talking about the leftovers of a talis. So therefore it can't be used for anything else other than just like a garment. And over here, if it's so small, it's not used as a garment. Tana Rabbanan, a third example, a third halacha in this concept. Shivrei Tana, the broken pieces of a Tanner Yashan, of an old oven. What does it mean, an old oven? An old oven means an oven, and we're talking about the olden times ovens that are made from earthenware. Now, as Rashi here explains, the earthenware that was designed and made as an oven, so before it was ever heated up even once, this earthenware is not very solid, it's not very strong. It's fresh and it could still break apart. But once you heat it up, the heat strengthens the earthenware. Okay, so Tana Yasha means that it was already used at least once, and therefore the cheres of the of the oven is strong enough that it would hold, and even if it breaks, it could be used for something else. It's an earthenware that's strong that could be used for something else. So so these broken pieces of this oven that was heated up at least once, it could be, it's not muktzeh, it could be moved around in a chatzah, it could be used. Divrei Rab Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, eini talem. The broken pieces of an oven cannot be used. It's muktzah. Hey, the Rabbi Yossi Mishum Rab Lazar ben Yaakov. He said in the name of Rab Lazar ben Yaakov, Shivrei Tana Yashan Sheni Talem b'Shabbos, that the broken pieces of an oven that was once used could be moved on Shabbos. And then he also added another halacha, Val Kisuyoi, the cover of an oven, could also be moved on Shabbos, even without having a handle, which makes it easier to use. Even without a handle, it could be moved on Shabbos. Okay, so now the Gemara will focus on explaining what this machlokes is about. Right? We have a machlokes here where the broken pieces of an oven that was used once at least could be used on Shabbos or not. What's their argument about? Amar Abaye, so Abaye says their argument is the same argument that we had before in the Mishnah. When you have broken pieces of a utensil that is useful for something, but it's not useful for the original keli, the original utensil that it was designated for. Kamifliki, that's what the argument is about over here. So you have broken pieces of an oven. Originally, what's this oven intended for? To heat, to cook in it. Now when it's broken, you can't use these broken pieces of earthenware as an oven to cook in it. You can use it for something else, you can use it to cover something. So the machlokes over here is, when something had one use and now you want to use it for a different use, is there an issue of nailad? Now on Shabbos, do we say it's a new thing that was created and therefore it's muktzeh? Or no, there's no issue of nailad. V'azda Rabbi Yehuda l'taimei. Rabbi Yehuda follows his opinion because Rabbi Yehuda holds that there's a problem of nailad and therefore it's muktzeh. V'Rab Meir l'taimei. And Rab Meir follows his opinion, which was the Tanakama of the Mishnah, which is Rab Meir, that holds that there's no issue of nailad, and therefore if it has any use, not only the original use that it was part of when it was in part of the oven, it could still be used. That's what the machlokes is about.
He agrees
with yeah, exactly. Maskeflo Rava. So now Rava asks a question on this pshat. He says that if so, if this is what the content of the machlokes is about, the miflagi b'shivrei tanor. Why are they arguing about an oven that broke into pieces? And now the question is whether these broken pieces that are useful for something else, whether it's muktzah or not. Why aren't they arguing about any case of any utensil that broke, and now the broken pieces are useful for something else and not for its original use? That the machlokes should apply anywhere. Why are we arguing specifically by an oven? So therefore Rava will explain here that we're talking specifically about an oven, but not only are we talking about an oven, as we'll see in the Gemara, we're talking about a very specific scenario of an oven, a specific type of oven, and here there's a machlokes, as the Gemara will explain. There's a specific oven that broke, that we're talking about, that wasn't a very good quality oven, as the Gemara will explain, and now the question is whether the broken pieces of this oven could be used. What's the machlokes? So we learned in the Mishnah as follows. So before I read it inside, what is the shape of how ovens were made back then? Of course, the ovens were not made back then the way they are today. The way the ovens were made then was basically an earthenware pot, a large earthenware pot with a big opening, but it also did not have a bottom. And you made the fire on the floor, on the ground, and it was placed on the ground, and the fire was made on the bottom. And then you were able to place the pots on top of this oven. But over here, the Gemara is going to explain what we're talking about is an oven that's actually placed over a pit. And the fire is made inside the pit. And the heat of the fire of the pit enters into the oven. Okay, so now the question is the heat of that fire in the pit strong enough and it's insulated well enough, the oven is positioned on the pit and it's insulated well enough that the fire in the pit goes upward and it enters into the oven. That's one kind of oven. That's a good quality oven. That's an oven that's well attached to the ground. It's wedged into the ground. It's good positioned in this pit, and the fire from the pit goes into the oven. That's one kind of oven. Then you have another kind of oven. It's positioned above this pit, but it's not insulated well. There is a fire in the pit that you could make for the oven, but it's not going to be hot enough. You're going to have to figure out how to make an additional fire inside the oven itself. You're going to have to make some kind of a makeshift floor for this oven itself to be able to make a fire inside the oven itself. Let's see inside. So nasnai al pia ba'ir or al pia dus. You place the oven over the opening of a pit or over the opening of a dus, which is the same as a pit, but it's just built above ground. V'nasan sham even. And you place a stone over there. What this means is that in order for it to be well insulated into the ground, it should fit into this pit. So you might have to put a stone there in order that it should fit well into the pit. It shouldn't fall in too deep, and it should be perfectly positioned there. So then Rabbi Yehuda says, Im masik milmato, if when you make the fire below inside the pit, vuhu nisak milmaila, and the oven that's above becomes hot, very hot from the fire inside the pit, so then tameh. This is an oven that becomes tameh. So we'll see soon the pshat of why this is, but only if it's a good quality oven. It gets hot from the fire inside the pit, then it becomes tameh. This is an oven that's susceptible to tumah. Vimlav, if it does not get heated up properly from the fire that's inside the pit, then tahir. Then this is a kind of oven that will be tahir. It's not a good quality oven, and it's tahir. The Chachamim disagree. Chachamim say, Hayil v'husak mikol makayim. If it's an oven and it has heat, it gets heated up either way, whether it's a good quality oven and it's connected well to the ground, it's not connected well to the ground, mikol makim, either way, tameh. The oven will become, it's a good enough of an oven that it will become tameh. Okay, now the Gemara will explain the machlokes about this oven. Again, we're bringing this up over here all to show you that there's a oven that's not the regular quality oven. There's an inferior quality oven, and that's what the machlokes is going to be about also regarding muktzah. But before we get to the muktzah, the Gemara will explain what is the machlokes here about this inferior quality oven that doesn't get heated up properly, it's not connected to the ground properly, whether it becomes tameh or not. So before I read the Gemara inside, usually we know actually regarding tumah, something that's connected to the ground does not become tameh. For example, the walls of a house, the floor of a house, that's all part of the ground. That's not something that becomes tameh. A utensil that's detached from the ground becomes tameh. Attached to the ground, that's not tameh. By an oven, according to the Tanakame here, who's this? Rabbi Yehuda, he says the opposite. That when it comes to an oven, dafka when it's connected to the ground, that's when it becomes tameh. Why? Because only when it's connected to the ground is it a good quality oven. It's connected well, it's insulated, the fire will heat it up properly. That's the way an oven is intended to be. Only then is it tameh. If it's not connected to the ground well, then it's not going to be tameh, because it's not a good quality oven. It's not a real oven. Let's see in the Gemara inside. So what's the source of their machlekes? The Gemara brings a pasuk. B'haikra, the following pasuk. When the Torah describes an oven that became tameh, what does the pasuk say? Taner v'kirayim yutatz. This oven should be demolished. Tmeim heim, tmeim yiyu lechem. It's tameh, it should be tameh for you. So Rabbi Yehuda says the Torah uses the term yutatz, which means to demolish. This is not a term, as Rashi explains here, that the Torah uses regarding any other utensil. Usually when the Torah talks about a utensil that's tameh, what does the Torah say? Shvira. That's the term used for breaking, for a utensil. Here it says demolish. Demolish refers to something, to like a structure, a building, something that's connected to the ground. So the word yutatz shows that it has to be connected to the ground. So Rabbi Yehuda Sava mechusa netitze tameh. An oven that's connected to the ground and it has to be demolished, that's susceptible to tumah. She'ei mechusa netitze, if it's not connected to the ground and it does not have to be demolished, it's just like any other utensil that's movable that you can break, that is toher. It's not a good quality oven, and it's tahir. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbanan say no. It says an extra time here in this pasuk, Tmeim yiyu lechem. It already said Tmeim heim. But then it says again, Tmeim yiyu lechem. From here Rabbanan say, Mikol makim. That means that any oven, whether it's connected to the ground, whether it's not connected to the ground, it's a good quality oven, it's not a good quality oven, either way it's going to be tameh. Frek the Gemara. So now the Gemara will explain how each one of them explains the other pasuk of the other opinion. V'Rabbanan nami haksiv yutatz. How do Rabbanan explain this expression of yutatz, of demolish, that the Torah uses here? And says the Gemara, according to the Rabbanan, hahu le'idach gisa. According to them, the chiddush of the Torah here is in the opposite. What's the opposite? So the Gemara explains. Salke daita chamine. I would think to say that an oven should be no different than any other utensil. What's the halacha by every other utensil? Kivin the chabre ba'ara. Once you connect the utensil to the ground, it becomes like part of the ground. The ground itself is susceptible to tumah? No. So I would think that an oven is like any other utensil. Kamash Malan, the Torah writes yutatz, not to tell you that an oven will become tameh only if it's connected to the ground. It's coming to tell you that it's going to be tameh even if it's connected to the ground. Even if the oven is not connected to the ground and it's not a good quality oven, it'll become tameh. The Torah is saying even if it's connected to the ground and you have to demolish it, it'll also be tameh. That's the Rabbanan's opinion. The idach nami, now according to Rabbi Yehuda as well, haksif tmeim yiyu lechem. What do they learn out from the fact that the Torah says tmeim yiyu lechem, an extra time telling you that it's tameh? The Rabbanan said, you learn from there whether it is connected to the ground, whether it's not connected to the ground. What does Rabbi Yehuda learn from this? Answers the Gemara, Hikid Rav Yudah Mashmul, the Amar Rav Yudah Mashmul, he learned that Rav Yudah Mashmul said as follows, Machloikis behesek rishin. This whole discussion over here about what quality oven is susceptible to tumah, whether it's connected to the ground or not, we're talking about when you are the very first time heating up the oven. As I mentioned before, the first time you heat up the oven, that completes the oven. That's the most significant time that strengthens the earthenware of the oven that it should be a good oven. So the whole argument over here about the quality of the oven is the first time you heat it up. Aval behesek sheni, once you heated it up once, well, and now you're heating it up a second time, or a third time, fourth time, afilat toli b'tzav v'gamel, even if you detached it from the ground and theoretically hung it from the neck of a camel, it would also be Tomei. Whole machlokes is only the first time. That's what we learn out from Tmeim Yiyu Lechem, that after the first time that it was designated as a good oven, so afterwards it doesn't matter anymore. Omar Ula. Ula now also clarifies and explains the opinion of the Rabbanon. The Hesek Rishon, L'Rabbanon, according to the Rabbanon, even the first time you're heating up the oven, it does not have to be even positioned on the ground at all. Not only does it not have to be well insulated into the ground, it doesn't have to be positioned in the ground at all. Afilet toloi b'tzaver gamel. Even if you have the oven that's movable and it's hanging on the neck of a camel, I don't see how it's practical to use an oven hanging on the neck of a camel, but theoretically, it's like even if it's not connected to the ground at all, it would be a good oven. Okay, till here is the Braise that we bring, or the Mishnah actually, that we bring about an oven. How is this relevant to our Gemara? We see over here that when it comes to an inferior quality oven, it's not connected to the ground well, it doesn't heat up from the fire in the pit well, so there's a machlokes whether this is considered to be an oven regarding tumah. So the Gemara now is comparing and saying that's exactly what the machlokes is over here regarding muktzah. When you have an inferior oven that wasn't connected to the ground well, Rabbi Yehuda says this is not an oven. Regarding tumah, we don't consider this to be an oven, so therefore regarding muktzah as well, he says it's not a good oven, and therefore it's going to be muktzah on Shabbos. On the other hand, the Rabbanan say, no, even an oven that wasn't connected to the ground at all, it was made on hanging from the neck of a camel, it's a good oven, and it could be used, and it's going to be makabel tumah, and it's not going to be muktzah as well. That's the machlokes that they had about this inferior quality oven. Maskefla Rav Ashi asks on this pshat of Rava, if this is what they're arguing here about, specifically this type of oven, ademifligi b'shivrei tana. So why are they arguing about an oven that broke? Lifligi b'tana gufa. Let them argue about the oven itself. The argument is about this inferior quality oven, where it has to be heated up the first time, inside a pit, insulated in the ground or not. That's what they should argue about. Why are they arguing about the broken parts of the oven? And the Gemara adds, if according to Rabbi Yehuda, even the oven, when it's intact, is not a keli because it's not a good oven, shvarav miboye. Would we need to say that the broken pieces of this oven are not a keli? So why according to your pshat, are they arguing only about the broken pieces of the oven? Elam Rav Ashi, so therefore Rav Ashi goes back to the original pshat. Really the pshat over here is, like we said in the beginning, what are they arguing about? Shivrei Tana, broken pieces of an oven, and the basis of their argument is broken pieces of an oven. Could it be used in any way like its original use as an oven, to heat up in it? And how would that be possible? We're talking over here about something that could be heated up in it like a tile. Meaning an oven, what's an oven made for? An oven is made for you place things inside the oven to heat it up. If you have a broken piece of an oven, you can make a fire under this broken piece, and you can put something on top of this broken piece of oven, like on a tile, like a little piece of dough or whatever it is, and it's going to heat up. So it could, and that's maisa tapke, it could still be used to some degree like its original use. That's what we're talking about over here. Now, what's the pshat? Rab Meir here that says that this is still going to be not muktzah because it could still be used like its original use. Rab Meir lidvarav de Rab Yehuda ka'oma. Rab Meir is saying something to Rab Yehuda according to Rab Yehuda's opinion, and this is what he's telling him. Lididi, according to my opinion, afile ba'oisen me'ein melacha. Even if this broken piece of oven that has any use, not used to heat up, I can use it to cover something, it wouldn't be muktzah. That's my opinion. It doesn't have to have its original use. However, your opinion is that it has to have a use for its original use, to be heated up for something. You should admit to me the kahai gavna, a broken piece of an oven that could still be used to heat up with it, melach it still could to some extent be used for its original use to heat up with it. So you should be ma'id for me in this case that it should not be muktzah. That was what Rab Meir was telling Rabbi Yehuda here regarding this broken piece of an oven. Now, what does Rabbi Yehuda say to this? Why did Rabbi Yehuda argue? For Rabbi Yehuda says, no, loy dami. You can't consider a little piece of an oven that could be used to heat up on it to be similar to its original use. Why not? Hasam, when it was part of the oven, when it was intact, how do you heat up in the oven? You place things inside. Over here you're heating up something, it's just on top of it, it's exposed on top. It's a completely different kind of heating up. Hasam, in an oven, in those days, how do they heat up things in an oven? They attached it to the wall. It's not. They didn't have these shelves that it positioned it on it. It's attached to the side on the wall vertically. So me'omid, it's standing up, meaning it's vertical. It's attached to the wall. That's how they heat it up. Hacha over here, if you want to heat something up in this little piece and you make a fire below it, lav me'omid, it's not attached to the wall. You're just placing it down, place it down on this piece of tile taken from this oven. So therefore, it's not compared to the oven at all. Hey, the Rabbi Yossi, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Al Shivrei Tana Yoshan. We said before that he said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, the broken piece of an oven, Sheni Tolim b'Shabbos, that it's not muktzah on Shabbos, Val Kisuyoi, and the cover of an oven, She'enet Tzarech Beis Yad, it doesn't need a handle to be allowed to move it on Shabbos. Amar Ravina said, Keman Metal Talinana Idno Kisei de Tanura. According to who do we today move around the cover of an oven? The Masa Machasya, in the city of Masa Machasya. The Eilem Beis Achizeh, this is a cover that has no handle. Keman Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. This is according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We always paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and over here as well, we paskin like his opinion. You can move around the cover of an oven without the handle. Zok the Mishnah. Ha'even shebikiruya. A rack that's placed inside the kiruya. A kiruya is, let's use an example, a pumpkin that you empty out. What's the purpose of emptying out a pumpkin? You want to use it as a keli, as a utensil, to be able to draw water with it. Okay. The problem though is that this empty pumpkin is going to float in the water. It's not going to go down into the well. So you place a rack inside to make it heavy, that it should weigh down and go to be able to draw water with it. If you're able to fill water with this empty pumpkin that has a rack inside, and the rack will not fall out, it's tied, it's fastened well to the walls of this pumpkin, you can fill with it, even though a rack is usually muktzah. But if the rack is connected to it, then you can fill with it. But if not, if when you're using this pumpkin and you're trying to fill the water, the rack is going to fall out, you can't use it to fill water with it. The rack inside makes it muktzah. Zmaira, a piece from a vine, a branch from a vine. Shikshura b'tefiach, which is connected to a pitcher, and you're using it to be able to draw water from a pit with it. You lower it down. You're using it as a rope. Namalam ba b'Shabbos. You're allowed to fill with it on Shabbos. The Gemara will explain this. Pekak hachaloin, the shutters of a window. Are you allowed to shutter a window on Shabbos? Here, this is not an issue of muktzah. Over here, there's a different issue of baina, that there could be building on Shabbos. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Bismanshu kosher v'toloi, if this shutter is connected to the walls of the house, and it's also suspended above the ground, then paikigim by. Then it's clear that it's already part of the house. You're not building here, and therefore you could build with this on Shabbos. You can shutter the windows on Shabbos with this. Vim lav, if it's not either connected, or even if it is, but it's not suspended above the ground, you can't shutter the windows. Chachamim say, benkach or benkach, either way, you're allowed to shutter the windows on Shabbos, it's not a problem. Okay, so the Gemara will start with the first case of this empty pumpkin that has a rack inside. Does that rack make it muktzah or not? So we said if it's well attached, then it does not make it muktzah. If it's not well attached, it will be muktzah. So the Gemara first brings another Mishnah and then connects it back to this case. Tanan Asam, there's another Mishnah that we're going to learn later. Even shal pi achavis. If you have a barrel, on top of the barrel, you have a rack. A person placed a rack on top of this barrel. So what do? Now you want to drink the wine. How do you? The rack is usually muktzah. How do you drink from this wine? Mata al tzida, tilt the barrel on its side. V'yinefeles, and the rack will fall off. You're not allowed to move the rack directly, but you can tilt the barrel, and the rack will fall off, and then you can access the wine. So Rabbi said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Loi shanu, that Mishnah there that says that you tilt it off, that it's allowed to be tilted off, el b'shicheach. If you forgot that rack there on top of the barrel. Avol b'maniach, but if you place that rack there specifically, that's where you wanted the rack to be, so then nasa basas l'davar asa. The entire barrel becomes a base for this rack, and it's a base for a forbidden item, so the entire barrel becomes muktzah. So now you can't tilt it, you can't move it off. It's all a base for something which is muktzah. That was Rabbi's opinion. So Rabbi was very machmir here. But Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yechanan, Rav Yosef said in the name of Rav Asi, that said in the name of Rav Yechanan, no, he was more lenient. Lo shanu, this, that it says that you can't touch the rack. You have to tilt it off. That's if you forgot the rock there. So then you have to tilt it off. But if you went and placed the rock to cover the barrel on top of the barrel, so then nasa kisei lachavis, we consider this rock now to be a cover for this barrel. It's not, the rock is not muktzah anymore. It's just simply a cover. So you can just take it off directly. So that was the machlokes over here. What happens when you place a rock on top of a barrel? Do I say it becomes a cover? Or do I say no, it's muktzah and you have to still tilt it off? So now we bring it back to the rock over here that was placed inside this empty pumpkin to be used as a keli to draw water with it. Amar Rabbi, so Rabbi said, Maisvinon ashmaitin, we asked a question from our Mishnah here, on my opinion. Ha'even shebikiruya, this rock that's placed inside this empty pumpkin, if you can fill the water with this, ve'einon efeles, and the rock will not fall out, you can fill with it. So what do you see over here? That once you place the rock inside, that rock now becomes part of this utensil to be used to draw the water with it. So why shouldn't we say the same thing regarding the case where a person placed the rock on top of a barrel? Why shouldn't that become a cover? Right? Rabbi said it doesn't become a cover, but why not? So he says, but v'loihi, it's not a comparison. Hasam, over there, in other words, in our Mishnah here, when he placed the rock inside this pumpkin, kivin the hatka, he fastened it, he tightened it to the wall. Somehow he tied it tight to the wall. Shav yadayfen. Over here it becomes part of the wall. So you're allowed to use it to draw water with it. In this case, where Rabbi was talking about, he just placed a rock on top of the barrel. He didn't connect it to the barrel. So in such a case, the rock will still be muktzah. Rav Yosef now said, and the question was asked, on my opinion, from the continuation of what it said in this Mishnah, that imlav, what did it say? If you place the rock inside this pumpkin and it's not tight and it could fall out, you can't use it to fill from this. So the question is, I see over here that if the rock is not tight to the pumpkin and it could fall out, then it's still muktzah. Why don't I say the same thing when you place a rock on top of a barrel? It's not fastened tight to the barrel. Why shouldn't it be muktzah? Rav Yosef says, as soon as you place it on top, it becomes a cover and it's not muktzah. Why not? So he answers, no, it's not the same thing. V'loihi. Hasam, in our Mishnah here, where a person placed the rock inside the pumpkin, kivin d'loi hotka, since he didn't tighten it to the pumpkin that he's using here to draw water with it, bituli batle, it has no use. The rock is going to fall out. The rock is not serving any purpose. If it's going to fall out, there's no point. But over here, when he places it on top of the barrel, it's covering it. In such a case, Rav Yosef holds that it's considered to be a cover. But now the Gemara explains, what's really the source of their argument? So the Gemara explains as follows. In other words, again, the Rabbah holds, you place a rock on top of a barrel, that does not designate it as a cover. You just put it there, that's not enough. Rav Yosef holds the very fact that you put it on top of the barrel, that makes it a cover. What's the source of their machlokes? Mar Sovar, Rabbah holds be'inon maisa. You have to actually do an action to change the nature of this rock itself. You have to do something in order for it to become a keli. Just placing it down is not enough. Mar Sovar, Rav Yosef's opinion is loy be'inon maisa. To take a rock that it should be considered to be a cover, you don't need any action. Just placing it down there. In other words, you don't have to change it. You just placing it down there is good enough for it to not be muktzah. This is something we learned about a long time ago in the Gemara about an item which is not a keli. In order to designate it as a keli, what exactly is necessary to do to designate it as a keli? Do you have to make a physical change in it or not? That's the machlekes over here. They're following their opinion that it happened in another case. The Chiyasir of Dimi Omer Rav Yechanan, V'amri Lo Omer Rav Zeira, the Chiyasir of Dimi Omer Rav Chanina, that is the name of Rav Chanina. V'amri Lo Omer Rav Zeira, Omer Rav Chanina. Once Rebbe came to one place, and he saw a row of rocks. He told his students, you have to go and think, have in mind that tomorrow, Shabbos, we're going to use this to sit on it. If you're going to have that in mind, then it's going to be designated for sitting and it won't be muktzah. Now the Gemara explains, Rebbe did not require them to actually do an action with this row of bricks to move it or to place it somewhere to be able to sit on it. Just having in mind that they're going to use it to sit on it was good enough. Rabbi Yechanan Amar, and Rabbi Yechanan argued. Rabbi Yechanan said, no, Hitzrichan Rebbe Lemaisa. Rebbe did require them to do an action with the bricks itself that it should not be muktzah. What is it that Rebbe told them to do? Rab Abi says, Tsu'u v'limdum. Go and line it up, prepare it to be able to sit on it. That's what they did. That's what Rebbe told them. Rab Asi said, no, he didn't tell them to position it, to move it, to be able to sit on it, but rather, Tsu'u v'shifshifum amalu. He told them, clean it off from any dirt that it has in it, from any cement. Clean it off that we should be able to sit on it. But you see that you have to do an action. So here we see this machlokes, is it necessary to do an action in order to prepare something not to be muktzah, or just your intention is good enough? Now we have other opinions about this very same story. Itmer, we learned another opinions about this. Rabbi Yosef ben Shaul said it wasn't a row of bricks, it wasn't a row of rocks. Soyar shel kairis have. It was a row of beams that were there that they wanted to use to sit on it. Rabbi Yechanan ben Shaul says, Geshoish shel svina have. It was a pole that's used in a boat. We once learned about this, the pole that they had on a boat to see if the water is not too shallow. That was what was there that they wanted to use to sit on. So now the Gemara says, Man da'ama geshoish, the one that says that it was this pole of a boat, kol shekain soyar. For sure, if it was these planks of wood or these beams of wood, for sure you would be allowed to sit on it. Man da'ama soyar, the one that says that it was pieces of wood, or beams of wood, avol geshoish, but if it was this metal that's used for a boat, kapadala. That you would not be able to use on Shabbos, and the reason is because this metal stick that's used by a boat is an expensive thing, and people put it aside. They want to use it only for the boat and not for anything else. If you're going to use it for something else, it could get bent out of shape, and that's something that's always going to be muktzah, machmas chesaron kis. This is the most stringent muktzah when something could get ruined, and therefore a person designates it and doesn't use it on Shabbos. Okay.